This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, welcome everybody. Bruchim Habayim. Parshas Va'era. The Chovos HaLevavos teaches us about the two great gifts that Hashem bestowed upon Klal Yisrael. So you think two great gifts? There's only one great gift. The greatest gift is the Torah. And yet the Chovos HaLevavos says, no, there are two great gifts that Hashem bestowed upon the Jewish people. Gift number one is the Torah. Chovos HaLevavos writes in the Shar HaBechina, "V'hagadola shabatoyvoi shehetiv v'hem habari la'adam." The greatest gifts that Hashem gave man, v'haraya hachazaka olav, and the greatest proof to Hashem's existence, number one, ha-Torah ha-nesuna l'Moshe nevi'oi olav Hashem, is the Holy Torah. But don't forget about the second great gift, and that second great gift is v'harois ha'oisos al yadai, and God demonstrating Himself miraculously, v'shanois ha'minhagim v'hatvam, changing nature, v'herois ha'moivsim ha'neiram, showing the awesome wonders. An amazing thing, says the Chovos HaLevavos, there are two great gifts that God bestowed upon the Jewish people. Number one is the Torah, and number two is the Nisim. And you ask, the Torah I get, the Torah is how we come close to Hashem, the Torah is how we get schar, it's the greatest mitzvah, the Talmud Torah keneged kulam. But because Rebbeinu Shalom brought frogs in Egypt, what do I get out of those frogs? What personally, on a personal level, what am I getting out of the frogs in Egypt? What am I getting out of those wild chayas running around mauling Egyptians? And yet the Chovos HaLevavos says these are the two greatest gifts that God gave the Jewish people. And this is an idea that we express in Halel Hagadol and Hoidul Hashem Ki Tov Ki Lo Olam Chasdoi, that we mention the miracles of Mitzrayim and we say Ki Li Olam Chasdoi, that it wasn't just a kindness for them, it was a kindness for all time. And what we would like to explore this evening is what exactly is the great benefit of the miracles of Mitzrayim. And like Rabbi Victor Miller points out in the Sefer Shari Oira, the same way, let's say I ask somebody, you learn? Yeah, sure, of course I learn. I have the whole art scroll Shas. Yeah, but did you ever open it? No. It's actually still in the plastic that I got it in, but it really looks good on the shelf. So does this person learn? No. You ever learn the Rambam? Yeah, I have the Rambam. No, did you ever learn it? You ever learn Shulchan Aruch? Yeah, I have it on my shelf. The same way, the fact that you own the books doesn't help. You got to learn them. It's the same thing with the miracles. I say, what benefit do you get from Makas Kinim? Yeah, lice, I know about. Yeah, but the same way, you don't get any benefit from Torah unless you learn it. You're not going to get any benefit from the miracles unless you learn about them. They're equal, right? If the Chovos HaLevavos says these are two great gifts, well, the same way you can only benefit from the Torah if you learn the Torah, you can only benefit from the miracles if you actually learn about them. And that's what we would like to do today. Learn a little graphically about the miracles of Mitzrayim. And we begin with the following. Everybody's familiar, the Haggadah of Pesach. There was a man by the name of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda hayanoisein bohem simonim. Tetzach Adash v'achav. Yeah? Now, I was always wondered, the makos are not exactly, rocket science. Most 5-year-old kids already know the makos. They know 10 different songs for the makos. It's not the kind of thing that you need a mnemonic to remember. It's not like the Great Lakes, right? The Great Lakes? Even with the mnemonic, right? Holmes, I still can't remember what the Great Lakes are. Holmes, Shkoyach, but what does the H stand for? It takes me an hour to remember. The H is, yeah, right. Yeah. So, you need a mnemonic for something that's hard to remember, right? Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, right? That one I remember. You need a mnemonic to help you remember something difficult. But the makos, everybody knows what the makos are. They're a tune, any tune you could ever think of is a tune for the makos. What's Rabbi Yehuda's big chiddush? Rabbi Yehuda hayanoisin b'hem simonim. Tetzach adash b'achav. Well, what's his big chiddush over here? So, what we're going to learn tonight is the Malbim's understanding of the makos. And we're going to make a few very important examinations of the language of the Torah. And the first thing we want to point out is that Makkah number 1, the Makkah of blood, Paro was warned. Right? So if you look, let's say in number 4, Hashem says, go to Paro in the morning, he's going to be standing by the water. You stand opposite him, take the stick, and you say to him, the Ribbon Shalom, the God of the Jews, sent me to you. Send out my people. You're not listening. If you don't, you should know that I'm Hashem. I am going to smite you with the stick in my hand, and all the water is going to turn to blood. So Paro was warned. Fine. And he should be warned. You can't punish somebody without warning. Fine. So let's talk about Tzfardea, the frogs. Hashem al Moshe, number 5, Bayal Paroi, and say to him, send out my people and let them serve me, and if you don't, I'm going to smack you with frogs. Fine, he was warned. And yet by the kinim, by the lice, Hashem says to Moshe, tell Aaron, hit the dirt and the kinim will come. Hey, wait a second. You didn't warn Paroi. Why doesn't Paro get the courtesy of advance warning? Tell Paro, like the Israelis, they're about to bomb a building. So they say, oh, by the way, we're giving you 15 minutes. We're going to bomb the building, so everyone leaves so that we could waste $10 million on our equipment and nobody get hurt. Right? That's Makadam Tzfardea, but Kinim, Paro doesn't get the courtesy of an advance warning. Why not? And if you notice, there's a pattern. Makkah 1 and 2, warning. Makkah 3, no warning. 4 and 5, warning. 6, no warning. 7 and 8, warning. 9, no warning. You say, hey, I never knew that. No, it's a good thing you came tonight, right? There's a pattern about the Makkahs. 1 and 2, they were warned, the 3rd not. 4 and 5 warned, the 6th not. 7 and 8 warned, number 9 not. Why? That's the first pattern we're going to pick up on. Look at number 7, the Malbim. In his first question, number 7, why in the arrangement of the Makkahs do you have the first 2 with warning and the 3rd without warning? Okay. Then the Malbim says, look, I already understand that if Rabbi Yehuda is giving a simon, a mnemonic device, he's obviously teaching me there are 3 groups of Makkahs. Group 1, the Tzach. Group 2, Adash. Group 3, Be'achav. In other words, it must be what he's teaching me is the Makkahs come in groups of 3. So what is the significance of the first group? What's the significance of the second group? What's the significance of the 3rd group? Okay. Very interesting. Another pattern. By the first Makkah, Hashem says, go to Paro in the morning, he's going to be by the river. That's by Makkah 1. That's by Makkah 4. And that's by Makkah 7. So in other words, there are 3 groups. Again, each group, the first 2 warned, the 3rd not warned. Right? 2 warned, no warning. 2 warning, no warning. 2 warning, no warning. The first of each group, 1, 4, and 7, Hashem says, Moshe, go in the early morning. Paro is going to be by the river. Okay? Then the 2nd Makkah, the 5th Makkah, the 8th Makkah. All, if you look in number 5 by the Tzfardea, Bayal Paroi, come to Paroi. What time? Presumably midday. Makkah 2, Makkah 5, Makkah 8, midday. Well, what's the meaning of that? Why? The first of each group is morning, and the second of each group is the afternoon. Okay. Now another question, this is more of a nuanced question. Again, the first 2, they're warned. 1, 2, warned. 4, 5, warned. 7, 8, warned. There's only one nuance of difference, the Makkah of Dam. By all the warnings, the warning goes like this. Paro, send out the Jews, and if you don't, I'm going to smack you. Okay? That's how the warning goes. Shalach ami v'yavduni, send them out. V'imoyin atol shalech. If you refuse, hineni, I'm going to smack you up. By the Makkah of Dam, Hashem doesn't say, Paro, send them out. And if you don't, I'm going to hit you. By the Makkah of Dam is, send them out. You're not listening. Therefore, I'm going to hit you. Hashem doesn't say, send them out. And if you don't send them out, I'm going to hit you. It's almost like Hashem is saying, I know, Paro, you're not. By the Makkah of Dam, it says, send them out. You're not going to, and I'm going to hit you. Why is the warning given in that way? Okay? Another question? Look in number 4 for a minute. So v'amartei elav, tell Paroi, God sent me, and you're going to know ki ani Hashem. Hine anoichi makeh b'mateh asher b'yadi. I'm going to hit with my stick al hamayim asher b'ya'ar, the water in the ya'ar. What's a ya'ar? A river. I'm going to hit the river. So interesting. Moshe tells Paroi, Hashem says to Moshe, tell Paroi that you're going to hit the river. By the way, if you look for a moment at number 18, that is what Hashem told Moshe to tell Paroi, that he's going to hit the river. But then Hashem tells Moshe, tell Aaron, don't just hit the river, hit all the water in Mitzrayim. Al meimei Mitzrayim, al naroisam, al yoireim, v'al agmeim. Hit all the water. And what does Aaron do? Vayaches hamayim asher ba'yor le'inei Paroi. All he does is he hits the water in the river. So what's his job? Hashem tells Moshe, tell Hashem tells Moshe, tell Paroi you're going to hit the river. Then Hashem says, Moshe, tell Aaron to hit all the water. And then Aaron only hits the river. What's he supposed to do? The river, all the water. Okay. Another very important point. Look at number 8. This is from Sefer Tehillim. In Sefer Tehillim, there are 2 prakim that talk about the Makos as well. One is Parak Kufhei, 105, and one is Parak Ayin Ches, 78. Okay? Now I want you to go through this with me. Look at number 8. Asher sam b'Mitzrayim oisoisav u'moivsav b'steit Tzayan. God placed in Mitzrayim signs and wonders in the field of Tzayan. Now this is an important thing. Considering the fact that these parashas are replete with the words oisois and moivsim, it would be nice to know what those words mean, no? What's an ois and what's a moifis? What's harder to do? You know, they say a lot of people can make moifsim, but to learn an ois of Torah, that's a little bit harder, right? You have a lot of bali moifsim, but it's a little bit harder to learn an ois of Torah. But that's for a different time. Okay? Now I want to go through these psukim with you. And you tell me if you have any questions on this. Okay? Let's see which makos is mentioned in Tehillim. Okay? Vayafoich lidam yoireyem. Okay, we got the first one, dam. Hashem turned the river to blood, and the flowing water that they can't drink it. Yishalach b'hem ha'oroiv. He sent oroiv. Oh, we got number 4, vayoichlem. Utzvardeya. We got number 2, vatashchisem. Vayiten lechasul yivulam. V'giam la'arbe. Oh, we got arbe. That's number 8. Yaroig ba'barod gafna. Oh, we got barod. And then we go a little bit further down. Yifales nasiv liapoy loichasach v'novas nafshem v'chayosam la dever. Here we got dever. Vayach kol b'chor. So it's going through the makos. Now, one obvious question is, why is it out of order? You'll have to come back to get the answer for that one. I'm not telling you tonight. Okay? Why it's out of order, that's for a different time. What we're going to address tonight is, it left out some of the makos. What makos did it leave out? The Malbim and Sefer Tehillim asks, it left out makas kinim, it left out makas shchin, and it left out choshech. And I guarantee you David HaMelech knew about those makos. Yeah? David knew about those. If you know about it, David HaMelech knew about it. Why is David HaMelech leaving out kinim, shchin, choshech? What do those 3 makos have in common? They're the last ones of each set. Kinim, dam tzvardea kinim, adash, oroiv dever shchin, barad arbe choshech. David leaves out the last of each set. Why is that? Okay, so now, you ready for this? Usually you have to wait a whole shiur to hear the punchline. Tonight you get the punchline right away, but you still can't leave. Okay? Says the Malbim, and by the way, you have on your sheet over here a picture of the Malbim. In my Zayda's house, there's only one picture on the walls in the house. And that's the Malbim. Why the Malbim? Well, first of all, in the house of the Chafetz Chaim, you should know There was only one picture of a Gadol. That was the Malbim. Chafetz Chaim writes in his commentary to TorahAnytime that he's not able to write on the level of Gedolei Yisrael. For example, the Malbim. So to the Chafetz Chaim, who is the Gadol of Yisrael? The Malbim. The Briskers say there are three Achronim that have the Kayach of a Rishayin. They have the power of an early authority. Number one, Reb Chaim Brisker, obviously, they say. Yeah? And the Vilna Gaon, and the Malbim. In fact, the Beis Halevi said there are certain comments on Tanakh that the Malbim wrote that none of the Rishonim were able to be Mefarish because the Malbim wrote it Baruch HaKodesh. My grandfather should be well. His grandfather was the Rav of the city of Linschitz in the 1860s. Okay, you're talking about 160 years ago. At the time that the Malbim was the Meir HaHara in the city. And my grandfather was a Yasaim, so all he had was his grandfather, who was a very close confidant of the Malbim. And my grandfather devoted his life to learning the works of the Malbim. The Malbim had a very difficult life. He was chased by the Reform. The Reform gave him a very hard time, and the Malbim fought back valiantly against the early Reform. The Malbim says like this: there are three fundamental ideas about God that not only the Jewish people, but every human being must believe with absolute conviction. There are three fundamental beliefs. Number one, Metzius Habayre. There's a creator. There's a creator. There's a God. You ever think about that? It's good to think about that sometimes. There's a God. There's a creator. Metzius Habayre. Number two, this God is not removed, is not remote, but He controls and manipulates every detail of your life. Nothing happens that's happenstance. Nothing happens that's coincidental. There is nothing too small for God to not just know about, no, not to know about, to directly cause. That's why the Vilna Gaon says, when you come out of the Beis HaKisei, you make a bracha asher yatzar, and you say, Goloi v'yadua lefnei chisei chavodecha. That my process, my digestion, is not just something that you're aware of. It is revealed and known before your throne of glory. Even such a lowly activity, even the most mundane activity, is absolutely controlled by you, Hashem. That's the idea of Hashgacha Pratis. Divine intervention. Exact control. Precise control. And the third fundamental idea is, yes, God controls everything. His power is limitless and nobody can interfere with His power. He's Bal HaYecholas. He's Takif Ubal HaYecholas Ubal HaKoiches Kulam. His power, His ability is not limited and not challenged and not confronted by any force in the world. These are the three great principles in life. Metzius Habayre, God's existence. Hashgacha Pratis, God's control of every detail of one's life. And Hashem's Yichaylas. Says the Malbim, these three ideals were the main purposes of the Makkos. The first set teaches the existence of God. The second set teaches God's Hashgacha Pratis. And the third set teaches God's absolute power. Says the Malbim, a diuk which is otherworldly. You ready for this? By Makas Dam, look at number 12. Koi Omar Hashem. What does it say by Makas Dam? Bezois Teida Ki Ani Hashem. You know what the purpose of this Makkah is? That I am God. That there's a God in this world. That's the purpose of the first Makkah. And since by Tzfardei and Kinim it doesn't say what the purpose is, we could safely assume whatever the purpose of Dam was, that's the purpose of Tzfardei and Kinim. Look at number 13. All of a sudden we come to the next set, Makas Arov. Then the Rebbeinu Shalom says, you know what this is for? Liman Teida Ki Ani Hashem B'kerev Haaretz. I am God in the middle of the land. I control your life. I control every facet of your life, every detail of your life. I have absolute control. Hashgacha Pratis, Ani Hashem B'kerev Haaretz. That goes for Arov, Dever, and Shchen. And you ready for this? Even though the Jewish people did not suffer from any of the Makkos, It was only the middle set that the Torah says the Jews were not affected by Arov, not by Dever, not by Shchen. Why does it only say it by those Makos? Because the purpose of those Makos is to show direct divine intervention. So that's why the Torah says very clearly, if the purpose of these Makos is to show how God manipulates every detail of life, these Makos you should know are only for Egyptians and not for Jews, and I'm going to demonstrate it. The first 3 Makos were done by Aaron. The second 3 Makos were not done not by Moshe and not by Aaron. By God himself. Vayas Hashem. You know why? Because it's to show Hashgacha Pratis, God's divine intervention. Nothing is too mundane for God to be involved in. That's why Hashem had to do it himself. And then finally the third set is Barad Arbe Choshel number 14. The Baruch Hashem says, you know what these Makos are for? Ki bapam hazois ani sholeach es kol magefoisai el libcha u'vavadecha u'v'yamecha ba'avur teida ki ein kamoini b'chol ha'aretz. The purpose of these Makos is to show I am in absolute control. Nobody could stop me. No one could challenge me. No one could limit my ability. Ein kamoini, there's no one like me. You Paro, you have your God. Your God is worthless. It does nothing. So these are the 3 fundamental ideals of the Makos. Ideal number 1, Leman Teida Bezois Teida Ki Ani Hashem. 1, 2, and 3. Leman Teida Ki Ani Hashem B'Kerav Haaretz Hashgacha Pratis. 4, 5, and 6. Ba'avur Teida Ki Ein Kamoini B'Chol Haaretz. 7, 8, and 9. Now, anytime you want to punish someone, you got to warn them. In Jewish law, how many Eidim do you need to warn someone before you punish them? 2. Makas Dam is Eid number 1, is the first warning. Makas Fardeh is the second warning. And then once Paro doesn't listen, we could snack him up. He's warned already. What do we have to warn him again for? He already was warned by 2 Eidim. Makas Dam is Eid number 1, Eid Echad. Makas Fardeh is Shnei Eidim. And now we smack up Paro. Makas Kinam doesn't need another warning. That's the first ideal. Paro, you didn't get it yet? Well, you better get it now. The next ideal is Leman Teida Ki Ani Hashem B'Kerav Haaretz. Arov, he's warned. That's the first warning. Dever, he's warned. He's warned twice. Bam! We don't warn him the next time. He got his 2 warnings. Barad, he's warned. Arbe, he's warned. Choshech, you're not warned. You already warned twice. Says the Malbim. The first 2 of each set were to teach a lesson. The third one was not to teach anything. It was just punishment. The third of each set was just to be mavaza him, to put him down, to disgrace him. That's the difference between an ois and a moifes. An ois is when you warn someone to teach them a lesson. A moifes is when you just punish them. Says the Malbim, that's what it means in Sefer Tehillim. If you look back on your sheets, in number 8, Asher Sam b'Mitzrayim Oisaisav. The signs were in Mitzrayim. They were to warn, to teach, to instruct the Mitzrayim. That's why b'Mitzrayim, the citizens of Mitzrayim. But the Moifsim, the punishments, that was against the land, b'Sedeit Sayan. Okay, that's the difference between an Ois and a Moifes. Says the Malbim, Makkah number 1 of each set was in the morning, when Paro goes to the Nile. Why is Paro going to the Nile in the morning? Besides the fact he had to take care of his needs before anybody caught him. Paro worshipped the Nile. The Nile, he said, Li Ya'iri. Paro worshipped the Nile. The Nile was the god of the Egyptians. But they also believed, like all the ancient religions, in the power of the sun. So Paro would wake up in the morning when the sun came up, and this way he would embrace his 2 gods, the god of the sun and the god of the Nile. Makkah number 1 was Paroi. Let me teach you a lesson. Your sun and your Nile are all worthless. That's why we come to you now. Makkah number 1, Makkah number 4, Makkah number 7, in the morning at the Nile. Makkah 2, 5, and 8, midday. What's Paro doing in midday? Well, Paro got up early, but none of his servants got up early. The servants of the king, they get up, if they're lucky, like Chatzos. And at Chatzos midday, Paro's sitting there, surrounded by all of his officials, governors, ministers, in his full glory, in his full power, when his gaiva is brimming to the top. Hashem says, Moshe, now that we got Paro at the Nile, now it's time to get him where he feels most comfortable. You warn him in midday now. So this way no one could complain. No one could complain, The first warning is when the gods are at their strongest. The second warning is when Paro feels his mightiest. That's the cycle. Warning, morning, warning, midday, and then smack. That's the first cycle. Laman Teda Kiani Hashem. The second cycle. Morning, afternoon, Shchin. And then the third cycle. Okay, and this is how the Malbim explains the purpose of the Makkah. Says the Malbim, in Sefer Tehillim it omits Makkah 3, Makkah 6, Makkah 9, because those were not instructive Makkahs, those were merely punishments. Since they're punishments, they didn't really, it's not something that we need to study. It wasn't to teach anything, it wasn't to instruct. It was just to punish, and that's why David HaMelech omits Makkah 3, 6, and 9 in Sefer Tehillim. Okay, so now let's get into some of the nitty-gritty of the Makkos. We mentioned that by the Makkah of Dam, the warning was a little bit different. It wasn't, you better let them free, and if you don't, you're going to get Dam. The warning was, let them go, you're not listening, I'm going to smack you. Why? Mom says very simple. If you go to somebody and he doesn't know you from a hole in the wall, and you say, you better do what I say, otherwise when you take a shower tonight, it's not going to be water, it's going to be blood. What do you tell him? Sei gesund, have a nice day, hope everything's well. I mean, get out, what are you talking about? So Hashem knows that before Paro experiences any makkahs, he's not going to say, let them free, and if you don't, he's not letting them free. He doesn't know what a makkah is. He's not going to believe Moshe Rabbeinu. So it's obvious the first makkah is not, and if you don't. He's not doing it. He's not buying this. That's why the makkah of Dam was different. Okay. Says the Malbim, now we understand. When Hashem tells Moshe what to tell Paro, he says, tell Paro, I'm going to hit the Nile. Then Hashem says, tell Aaron to hit all the water in Mitzrayim. What does Aaron do? He hits the Nile. And then all the water in Mitzrayim turns to, what's going on over here? What's he supposed to do? Mom says very simple. If the purpose of the Makkah, right? Who's going to tell me? What's the purpose of the first set of the Makkahs? To teach? What's the limud of the first set? Metzias Hashem, to teach there's a God. That's why the first Makkah is against the river. The river is Paro's God. So all Aaron needs to do, as far as Paro is concerned, is turn his God into blood. He doesn't need to turn my seltzer bottle into blood. Paro's not worshipping my seltzer. All he needs to do is turn the Nile into blood. So Hashem says, tell Paro, you're going to hit the Nile. Because in terms of what we need to teach Paro, all he needs to learn is the Nile is going to turn to blood. But I'm afraid, Hashem says, that now if the Mitzrayim have other water to drink, they're not going to suffer from this Makkah. So behind Paro's back, all you're going to tell Paro is you're going to hit the Nile. But behind his back, you're going to hit all the water in Mitzrayim. So what does Aaron do? He pulls a trick. Vayaches hamayim asher bayar. He hits the river le'enei Paroi, to Paro's eyes. But behind his eyes, he quickly, he puts the stick behind his back. He waves it here, he waves it there. He gets all the waters. Le'enei Paroi, all that's necessary to hit is the Nile. But Hashem doesn't want, in other words, in terms of the limud, only the Nile is necessary. But Hashem doesn't want the Egyptians to have what to drink, and therefore Aaron, behind his back, he hits all the water. Okay, ready for this? So that's Makkah's Dam. Look at number 20. And then 7 days pass after Hashem has smitten the river. Now this is the only Makkah that Paro doesn't ask Moshe to remove it. You know why? Because every other Makkah, Hashem says, send them forth, and if you don't, you're going to get the Makkah. So Paro sees that if he decides to send them out, the Makkah will stop. But in this case, Paro was never given the opportunity to send them out, and the Makkah should stop. So Paro never asked for it to stop. And the Torah says 7 days are over. Comes the Abarbanel, and the Abarbanel says, let me explain to you, get a load of this, how the Makkos there was a natural element to it. You see, what happened was, the water was contaminated. And what happens when water is contaminated? Right? Like, let's say there's a BP oil spill. So all the fish die. So now science has to stop for 50 years. And they have to have scientists, washing 3 birds in South America. They have to spend their entire careers washing down the birds, right? What happens when the water is contaminated? The fish die. Now, so you have water with dead fish in it, like Corona Lake, right? You go to Corona Lake, you'll see thousands of dead fish. I think it's because of Tashlech. They just croak after everybody throws their Averos in. But all the fish are dead. And the frogs can't take it. I mean, if you were a frog, would you want to be hanging around the water there with all the dead fish? So the frogs got to get out of there. So the frogs come out of the water. Now, what are they going to do outside? So they start procreating in a tremendous way. And they're everywhere. And the people, they can't breathe. There are frogs crawling up their sleeves. And they get rashes. And they start to scratch. And now they have lice all over them. And, a horse. If you were a horse, no really, if you were a horse with lice all over you, I mean, you would go crazy. All the animals are alright, they're going ballistic, and then the animals are dropping dead. This is how the Abarbanel explains some of the Makkos. So the Malbim says, no, you can't say such a thing, that there was then we're minimizing the miraculous understanding of the Makkos. It says the Malbim, we don't accept this opinion of the Abarbanel. I once heard Rav Miller says, we don't accept it, but Paro held like the Abarbanel. If you want to understand why Paro's heart was hardened, because he was a big bucky in the Abarbanel ala Torah, and he understood there was a natural element to it, yeah? Says the Malbim, well, that's why the Torah emphasizes, the frogs did not come until 7 days after the water was already cured. To teach, this has nothing to do with, pollution. It was an unconnected thing, it was a miraculous thing. But if you want to know the deeper meaning of the first 2 makkos, blood and frogs, says the Malbim, you should know it's like all the time that the Gentiles think Jewish blood is cheap and they'll just cover it over and it will never come back to haunt them. No. All of a sudden, all the babies that they threw in the river, the Egyptians wake up in the morning and the blood is coming back. We thought we covered it all over. We thought nobody would ever remember such a thing. We thought it was hidden. No, now all of a sudden the blood is resurfacing. And to make it worse, all of a sudden the frogs start coming out. They look like little children, the little babies they threw in, and they're croaking and they're screaming as if to try to take revenge against the Egyptians for throwing them in the first place. Says the Malbim, the purpose of the first set is to teach the existence of God. How does Hashem do it? The first thing is, Hashem comes after their God. Their God is the river. All of a sudden, the mighty Nile River, the source of blessing for the Egyptians, all of a sudden it turns into disgusting blood. What kind of God, right? Like we say to the nations of the world, what kind of God is your God? He can't even protect himself? Right? What kind of God is a God that can't protect himself? Look what happened to the Nile River. All of a sudden it's dead. And then to make matters worse, not only is it dead, now it's the agent of our God to punish you. Now all of a sudden the frogs are flying out of the river, attacking everybody. That's set number 1. Paro can't take it anymore. He says, I can't take it, get out of here. So Moshe says, okay, no problem, let's make a deal. Moshe rubs his hands together. You tell me when you want it to stop and I'll make it stop then. So Paro says, Vayomer lamachar, number 23. I want it to stop tomorrow. So Moshe says, no problem. Laman teida. Ki ein kashem elokeinu. This is a new Laman teida. Laman teida, ki ein kashem elokeinu. What's the meaning of this? Meaning of this is like this. There's a Gemara in Brachas. Listen carefully. Reb Chelboy said in the name of Rav Huna, La'olam yehei adam zahir betfilas hamincha. You should always be careful to daven mincha. Shachris, of course you're careful. You wake up in the morning, you daven shachris. Mariv, you don't go to sleep before you daven Mariv. But mincha, you're busy, middle of the day, you have to squeeze it in, you have to chap arayin, it's hard to be mechavein, you're in the middle of work. Be very careful about the tefillah of mincha. Why? Shaharei Eliyahu loinene ela betfilas hamincha. When Eliyahu had his episode with the prophets of Baal, he was only answered when he davened mincha. Shenemar vayihi ba'alois hamincha vayigash Eliyahu hanavi. So you can ask a question. I should daven mincha because Eliyahu was answered by mincha? How does that show that mincha is any better than shachris or marav? Eliyahu happened to have been their mincha time. If he would have davened shachris, he would have been answered by shachris. If he would have davened marav, he would have been answered by marav. Just because Eliyahu was answered by mincha, he would have been answered if he said tehillim in between shachris and mincha also. What proof is there that mincha is so important from the fact that Eliyahu was answered by mincha? He would have been answered whenever he davened. And then the Gemara digresses. The Gemara says, you know what? Once we're on the topic, that Gemara talks about shachris, mincha, marav. The Gemara says, once we're on the topic of Eliyahu's tefillah, Eliyahu said 3 words. Aneni, Hashem, Aneni. The first Aneni is that fire should come down from heaven. And the second Aneni is that whoever witnesses the miracle should not think it's kishuf. What's this got to do with the price of tea in China? We're talking about the importance of davening mincha. And then the Gemara has to say, Eliyahu said 3 words, Aneni Hashem Aneni. The first Aneni was the fire should come down. The second Aneni was that people shouldn't think it's kishuv. Why is the Gemara digressing to discuss this? Says the Malbim in his commentary, Torah. Anybody over here, any kishuv machers here? Any witchcraft? No? Alright, in case anybody was thinking of going into that career, I'll give you a few tips of kishuf. The Zohar HaKadosh says, kishuf only works from midday until midnight. It's good to know if you're scheduling any big shows, you want to get any gigs, make sure, you schedule something in the morning for a yeshiva, you're going to be in big trouble. You're going to try to pull the rabbit out of your head. It doesn't work in the morning. It only works from midday until midnight. The rest of the day, the koiches atumah are farshlufen. Only midday to midnight. Don't say I didn't tell you, okay? Eliyahu Hanavi is having this whole battle with the Nevi Aval, and he makes a whole show. He wants fire to come down from heaven. And he has to daven, God, make a miracle. And I don't want anyone saying it's kishuf. Hey, Eliyahu, I have a great idea. If you don't want anyone saying it's kishuf, make your show in the morning. If you don't want anyone saying, if you have to daven, aneni shelo yoimar ma'asek shafim. If you have to pray that you don't want people to think this is a magic show, so do it in the morning. Magic doesn't work in the morning. Why is Eliyahu waiting for the afternoon? You know why? Because the most effective tefillah of the day is tefillas mincha. So he's waiting to do it after he davens mincha. Because shachris, he feels, is not going to be enough. Marav is not going to be enough. The fact that he has to daven, let nobody say it's kishuf, that teaches you that mincha is the most effective tefillah of the day. Otherwise, why is he waiting for mincha time? If you're worried people are going to think it's kishuf, then do it in the morning. By the way, this is a very important limud. If you need something, if someone needs something in life, daven for it in mincha. Mincha is the most effective tefillah. Says the Malbim, you ready for this? Let's see if you remember what I said. Makkah 1, 4, and 7. Moshe comes to Parai Baboiker, by the Ya'ar. Word now by Makkah 2, Tzfardeya. When did Moshe come to Parai by Tzfardeya? Boyel Parai, no? Midday! So Paro's unimpressed. Paro says, you come to me midday and you tell me you're going to make a magic show? Kishuf! Moshe says, when do you want it to stop? Paro says, Machar, the morning! Tomorrow morning! Let's see if you could do it in the morning! Moshe said, no problem, I'll do it in the morning. No difference to me. This is not Kishuf. That's why Paro says, Machar! Because Moshe comes in midday. So Paro says, you do it in the Machar, you do it in the morning. Moshe says, I'll do it in the morning. Why does he say ki ein kashem Elokeinu? We know Hashem is Rachamim, Elokeinu is Din. I'm showing you he has Midas Hadin by bringing the Makkah, And I'm showing you as midas harachamim by taking the makkah away. Okay, next makkah. You ready? Kinim. All of a sudden everyone's scratching themselves. I know it feels real, but don't worry. The pasuk says, "V'atihi akinam ba'adam u'va'behema," man and then animal, and then kol afar ha'aretz, then the earth. The Malbim says the reason why the psukim say first the men, then the animals, then the earth, is to teach not like the Abarbanel. Abarbanel says that because of the pollution in the water and the frogs, all of a sudden the earth became polluted. No, that's not how it started. It started unnaturally. It started in man, and then it spread to animal. Usually it goes from the fleas, go from the animals to the men. No, it started the opposite way, so people should realize this is not a natural process, this is a supernatural process. Okay. Enough for Kinim. That's as much as I could take with the Kinim right now. We're on to the second set. What's the purpose of the second set? The purpose of the second set is to teach Hashgacha Pratis. That is why, beginning with Arayv. Yeah? Look at number 29. V'hiflesi bayoim hahu es eretz Goshen. This is the first time where God says Eretz Goshen will be spared. Why only by the second set is this mentioned? Because the first set is just to show Hashem exists. The second set is to show the detailed control of Hashem's hashgacha. Hashem saying, only in Mitzrayim proper, not in Goshen. Says the Malbim. Now that doesn't mean to say that the Jews suffered from Dam, Tzfardeh, and Kinim. There was Dam in Goshen, just not in the Jewish people's cups. Any Egyptian that went to Goshen was affected by Dam. Any Egyptian that went to Goshen was affected by Tzfardeh. But Arayv! The wild animals did not enter Goshen at all. They didn't enter. So you could imagine on the border, there's like a big lion, giraffe, octopus, snakes, all on the border. So if you want to know what the border of Goshen is, you just see where the animals were lined up. Okay. Look in Pasuk Yates, number 29. V'samti fidus bein ami uvein. By the way, and this set is introduced with the declaration, Laman Teida. Ki ani Hashem b'kerev haaretz, hashgacha pratis. I am Hashem in middle of the land. I'm involved in your affairs. V'samti fidus bein ami uvein amecha. I'm going to make a separation between my nation and your nation. Why does it use the word fidus? Fidus literally means what? Everyone around? Everyone here? Yeah. Fidus? Kadia, redemption. What's the redemption? Redemption is like this. If a Jew meanders into Egypt proper, yeah? And all of a sudden there's a lion there. Really the lion should eat up the Jew, but the lion doesn't attack the Jew. Instead of attacking the Jew is redeemed by the lion attacking the Egyptian. That's the meaning of fidus. There was a pidyon. You ready? This is my favorite part of the shir. Lemachar yiyeh ha'ois hazeh. Tomorrow will be the sign. And what does the next pasuk say? Vayas Hashem kain. Hashem did so. Says the Malbim, if you look later by Dever, it says, Machar yasa Hashem es hadever. Tomorrow Hashem will make the Dever. And then it says, Vayas Hashem es hadever. Mimachras. Hashem did it tomorrow. The warning was, Hashem said, right, again, the warning was, Hashem's going to do it tomorrow. And it says, Hashem did it tomorrow. But not by Yarav. By Yarav it says, L'machar yiyeh ha'is hazeh. Tomorrow will be the sign. And Hashem did it. That implies Hashem did it immediately. You ready for this one? Wild animals. How many wild animals live in Egypt already? So you got to import the polar bears. Where do they live? South Pole, North Pole, Antarctica. You got to give them time to get there. I mean, give them a break. You got to give them at least a day to get there. You have lions in the jungle, yeah? So they have to go all the way from Zimbabwe, make their way through, North Africa. I mean, give the poor lions time to get there. You have, the gorillas in the rainforest. They can't come overnight. It takes time. I mean, you should be happy they're doing the job. Don't pressure them. L'machar yiyeh ha'ois hazeh. Tomorrow the ois will be here. But vayas Hashem kain. Hashem got to it that day. That day Hashem sent a message to all the animals from all over the world. Get going. Start traveling. But when are they going to get there? They're not going to get there till l'machar. That's why it says, l'machar yiyeh ha'ois hazeh. Tomorrow you'll see it. But vayas Hashem kain. Hashem did it now. Hashem started them going now. So Paro can't take it anymore. So Moshe says, when do you want them to go? Paro says, now. Moshe says, look, you got to give them time to leave also. It took them a day to get here. You got to give them till tomorrow to leave. So Vayomer Moshe, Hine Anochi Yotzei, number 31, Me'imach, Ve'atarti el Hashem, V'sar ha'arov mi Paroi, me'avado, me'amai, Machar. It ain't stopping till tomorrow. Look at number 33. So Vayas Hashem kedvar Moshe. Hashem did what Moshe said. Vayasar ha'arov, and the Arov left. Me Paroi, from Paroi. Me Avoda, from the servants. So me Amoi. Loi Nishar Echad. Says the Malbim, there's a difference between Noisar, leftover, and Nishar, remain. I'll explain to you the difference. You go to your grandmother's house, and she serves you Brussels sprouts. A whole big plate of Brussels sprouts, yeah? And you eat how much? Half a spoonful. Is the left nishar, or is the left noisar? In other words, are you taking it home and eating it tomorrow night? Or the same way you weren't eating it tonight, you're definitely not eating it tomorrow night. It's not nishar. You did not save this for tomorrow. Saving is when you take, 3 portions of what we give you tonight for Thursday night and for Friday night. That's saving. Leftovers is when you never want to see it again. Yeah? When by the Arov, it doesn't say there were nothing left. It says, Lo nishar. They didn't preserve it. In other words, the Mitzrim could have said, now that they're all dead, this raccoon, this fur, this would make a nice coat, a nice streimel. This is a nice mink. No. God did not let them preserve it. Not only was there not leftover, there was nothing remained. Okay. Now this is a really good one. By every makkah, Moshe is instructed, V'amarta, you should say. By the makkah of Dever, look at number 35, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe. Again, this is the second one of the second set. Boy el Paroi, V'dibarta elav. Speak. This is the only makkah number 5, where he's commanded to speak. What's the difference between Amira and Dibor? So he's, I know, Amira is raka, soft, right? Koisoyma lebeis Yaakov, v'sagei lemnei Yisrael. Amira is soft, and Dibor is hard. No, that's not what's going on over here. If Hashem told Moshe, say to Parai, by all the other makkahs, Moshe didn't go to Parai. Parala, I have some news for you. I want to tell you something very nice. Don't worry. It's not, Amira doesn't mean soft when it comes to the makkahs. There's also another difference between Amira and Dibor. Amira means just to say very concisely. Dibor is to give a whole long-winded explanation. Dibor is to be marich, Amira is to be makatzer. Amira is short, Dibor is long. The only makkah where Moshe was instructed, v'dibarta elav, is this makkah, Dever, the makkah of Dever. Why? The Malbim says very simple. By the makkah of Dam, if let's say after Paro does not send forth the Jewish people, and Moshe brings the makkah of Dam, and Paro turns on a shower after a long sweaty day in the desert there in Egypt, and he was expecting to feel nice, fresh and clean after the shower, and instead he feels disgusting. Let's say Paro would say, you know what, Moshe, let them go. So he could let them go, and the makkah would stop. So it's not necessary to give Paro a whole long drasha by any of the makkahs, because at any time, if he decides to let us go, the makkah will stop. But what's Dever? Dever is the cattle drop dead. Meaning the makkah lasts for how long? 1 split second. If Paro decides not to listen, it's all over. So by this makkah, don't v'amarta elav. Don't just say it quickly. V'dibarta. Give him a long drasha and explain to him exactly what is going to happen in every detail, because if he doesn't listen, there's no turning back. There's nothing he could do about it. It already happened. That's why by the makkah of Dever it says v'dibarta and not v'amarta. An amazing chiddush of the Malbim. Okay. Now look at number 37 for a moment. Again, this is part of the second set. And the second set is to teach Hashgacha Pratis. And by the Arayv, again we mentioned that it did not enter the land of Goshen. Now we're showing even greater Hashgacha Pratis. Not only is God, listen carefully. People say, yeah, Hashgacha Pratis to my health, to me, but not my money. If anyone takes even $1 from me, that's not Hashgacha Pratis. I'm going to punch him in the face if he takes $1 from me. There's no, by my money. There's no Hashgacha Pratis by my money. Don't get involved in my money. So Hashem says, no, you want to see Hashgacha Pratis, not only with you, but even your cash. Because, Vahifla Hashem bein miknei Yisrael uvein miknei Mitzrayim. I'm going to differentiate between your cattle and the Egyptian cattle. Whatever you own will not be harmed. Whatever the Egyptians own will be harmed. And not only that, what if an Egyptian has cattle, but you have a claim on it, you have a certain monetary ownership of it? So not only what you actively acquired will not be harmed, but v'lo yamus mikol of Bnei Yisrael. Okay, now get a load of this. This will be the second to last offering of the evening. Look in number 37, Pasuk Zayin. Vayishlach Parai. You ready for this? You want to see Ruach HaKodesh? You want to see the Malbim's Ruach HaKodesh? Listen to this. Vayishlach Parai. Parai sent. V'hine loy meis mi miknei Yisrael ad echad. Not one cattle of the Jewish people died. So what would you expect Paro's reaction to be? Go, get out of here! No. Vayichbad le Paro hardened his heart v'lo shilach hasam, and he didn't send forth the people. Wait a second. This pasuk makes no sense. Paro went to check to see if God was good with his word. Not one Jewish cattle died! So what does Paro do? He says, you're not leaving. What does the first part of the pasuk got to do with the second part of the pasuk? You would think just the opposite. If he sent, and not one Jewish cattle died, then he shouldn't harden his heart. What's the connection between the fact that no Jewish cattle died and Paro hardened his heart? You ready for this? Says the Malbim. It doesn't say loy meis mi miknei Yisrael echad, like in the pasuk before. It says umi miknei v'nei Yisrael loy meis echad. It says loy meis ad echad. Now who remembers in Parshas B'Shalach by the Yamsuf? What does it say? Loy nishar bohem ad echad. Nobody remained, but Chazal darshan ad v'loy ad b'chlal. Nobody remained until one. But one did remain. Who was that? Parai. And if you look in Sefer Shoftim, by the war against Sisera, it says loy nishar ad echad. Not even up to one died. Remained. But Sisera remained. So too by the cattle, says the Malbim, loy meis mi miknei Yisrael ad echad. Up to one they didn't die, but one Jewish cattle died. Which Jewish cattle died? You ready for this? Remember there was a woman by the name of Shloimis Bas Divri? She was abused by an Egyptian man. Their son, before the Torah was given, was not Jewish. But Paro thought he was Jewish because the mother's Jewish. But Paro didn't realize that's only after the Torah was given. So really, he was a goy. And that's why his cattle died. But Paro sent out a message and he found out, there's one Yidala and his cattle died. Paro didn't know that before the Torah was given, he's a guy. Loy nishar ad echad. That's why Paro hardened his heart. Because Moshe is a liar. Because there was one Jewish cattle that died. Paro didn't realize he wasn't Jewish. Okay? Amazing pshat, unbelievable. Okay, now let's just the last mark of Shchin. The mark of Shchin. Okay, I just have to tell you, we're doing a very big mitzvah tonight. Very, very important mitzvah. Besides the mitzvah of Limud Torah, the Ramban in the beginning of Boy says, I know a lot of you look very tired now. And probably the reason is because last night you were losing sleep over why there's so many crocodiles in the Nile River. And you were tossing and turning. Why are there so many crocodiles in the Nile River? And I'll tell you why. It's a good thing you came tonight. You'll be able to sleep tonight. And the reason is because, according to many Rishonim, Tzefardea was not frogs, they were crocodiles. And the Netziv learns like that, and the Malbim learns like they were crocodiles. And at the end of the crocodiles, so Moshe says, Rak Bayor Tisharna, they should only remain in the river. So all the crocodiles from all over the sun, they congregated in the river. That's why there's so many crocodiles in the Nile. That's the leftover remnant of Makas Tzefardea. And the Ramban writes, these are the most dangerous crocodiles in the world. If you put a spear into them, it won't go in. If you shoot them with an arrow, it won't penetrate. So any alligator hunters over here? I'm just telling you, it's good to know, just in case it's ever Nagea, if you need to kill an alligator, the only way to do it, the Ramban says, is you have to take a sword and get it in the soft underbelly. Whatever, if it's ever relevant, this way you remember how to kill the crocodiles in the Nile. But, the Ramban says, don't get too close to their edge. Because those guys, they could eat 2 or 3 humans in one swoop. Because these are tzfardeya. These are the actual tzfardeya. And then the Ramban says, you ever wonder why when locusts attack the Middle East, they never will attack Egypt, even if they destroy Israel? Because Moshe davened. Moshe davened. Lo nishar arecha, not even one grasshopper should remain in Egypt. And therefore, until today, that tefillah stands up for Egypt for the end of time, that they will never be attacked by grasshoppers. Says Ramban, why am I telling you this? Says Ramban, the more you talk about the miracles of Mitzrayim, the more you mekayim the mitzvah of sichu b'chol nifla'osav. Sichu b'chol nifla'osav. Okay, one more makkah. Shchin, you ready? Says the Malbim, the pasuk says, look at number 39. Hashem tells to Moshe and Aaron, take 2 fistfuls of soot, of ashes, and Moshe throw it up to the heavens, and it will cover all of Mitzrayim. So the Malbim says there are a lot of miracles going on here. Because if Aaron and Moshe both have to take fistfuls, how is Moshe then going to take both of their fistfuls in one fistful? That's the first miracle. Second miracle. You ever try throwing something up in the sky? So look, if it's a baseball, and you know how to throw a ball, you could get it pretty high up. You ever try throwing sand up into the sky? Try it. No, try it. It doesn't really go that high. You ever try throwing ashes? It doesn't go anywhere. So how's Moshe supposed to take ashes and throw it up to the Shamayim? It's not even going a foot up. That's another miracle. Okay. Now you have 2 fistfuls of ashes. How much surface area do you think you're going to cover in 2 fistfuls? Basically nothing. And those 2 fistfuls then go ahead and cover the entire land of Egypt. These are all part of the miracles of Shchin. This is the second set of miracles, yeah? The second set of miracles we said only God did. The first set was Aaron. The second set was God. Now I understand why Makkah 4 and 5, the Khartoumim didn't even try to imitate it. All the other Makkahs, the Khartoumim tried. Because they saw Aaron did it, or Moshe do it. So they figured they're doing it with Kishuf, so we'll do it. But Makkah 4 and 5, Arov, Dever, it was only God. They didn't even try. Shchin, Hashem pulled the trick. Hashem said, I know this is the second set, and really this shows Hashgacha Pratis. I'm supposed to do it. This one I want both of you to do. We'll try to fool them. Moshe and Aaron were involved in Shchin. Look in Pasuk Yud Aleph. All of a sudden the Khartoumim say, Moshe and Aaron, you're doing it? Now we'll try. We'll give it a shot. But they couldn't do it. La yachlu ha-Khartoumim lamed l'fnei Moshe m'nei Ashchin, ki haya Ashchin b'Khartoumim v'chol Mitzrayim. There are 2 reasons they couldn't do it. Number 1, they're covered with boils themselves. How are they supposed to do anything? They can't even pick up their magic wand. Right? They can't even pick up everything. They're full of shchin. And number two, who are they they have no specimen. Who are they going to put shchin on? All the Egyptians are already completely covered. So that for these two reasons, the Khartoumim were not able to cover, to be effective with the Makkah of shchin. Now I want to tell you, the last Makkah of this week's Parsha, Barad, is the most spectacular of all the Makkahs. But unfortunately, I don't have time to tell you about it right now. And I'm going to tell you, there are three ways to catch it, and you have to catch it, because if you don't know what Makkah's Barad is, you're going to go the rest of your life not understanding Makkah's Barad. It's not going to be good. So I'm begging you, you got to find out about Makkah's Barad according to the Malbim. It's the most spectacular, and I'm telling you, there are three ways to get it. Number one, you could come to the Shiur in the Young Israel Friday morning at 10 o'clock. Or you could come here to Congregation Torah for Shal Shudas. Or you could catch it on TorahAnytime after Shabbos. But I beg you, please try to find out about Makkah's Barad. It's really spectacular because Barad has lightning and it has thunder and it involves the speed of light and the speed of sound and all kinds of incredible processes that the Rebbe Shem had to manipulate. So I'm giving you three options. But coming back to the beginning of the Shiur, where the Chovos HaLevavos says that there are two great benefits that Hashem bestowed upon mankind. Number one is the Torah, and number two is the miracles. And we asked, what benefit is there to me that polar bears came into Mitzrayim and, mauled the Egyptian? What benefit do I have that by the way, you know how the animals got into the houses? How'd they get in? You lock the door. So no, the Medrash says the octopuses came. And octopuses have suction cups on their hands. And they, pulled out the locks. And then the polar bears walked in. So the Egyptians probably didn't feel that comfortable. All of a sudden they hear the lock, turning. And then, they open the door and it was not a pleasant sight. But that's what happened. But what benefit does it have to me that this happened in Mitzrayim? The answer is, like the Malbim says, that there were three great principles that were taught to the world through the Makkahs. Number one, Metzius Habayre, the existence of the Ribbon Shalom, that there's a creator. Number two, Hashgacha Pratis, the divine intervention in every facet of life. And number three, the Yecholos of Hashem, Ki ein kamani b'chol haaretz. And this was the greatest gift to mankind. The knowledge of Hashem through the Torah, and the knowledge of Hashem through the agent of the Makkahs. And it gave us the greatest gift. It gave us Deya, true knowledge of Hashem, which is our greatest treasure. Thank you everyone for coming. Have a wonderful evening.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.